mile. Guys right has the area.
Roger, we have the area. Hoist operator has the con.
Check guys right out of the con, you clear right, move forward.
Well, Dana, it's a pleasure to be sitting with you here. We've done a lot of work in the last 2 days. We've interviewed about 16 people. Yourself and your colleague are the last two. Tell us a little bit about, I guess, your journey to get here. Introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your journey.
Absolutely, Jay. I'm a bit of a career pilot. I started off flying when I was 16 in the Air Cadets as a glider pilot, and then won a scholarship for a private pilot's license at 17. So over my career, I've gained about 13,000 hours of flying. Joined the Air Force when I was 19, and I was on my first operational squadron when I was 21 as a tactical helicopter pilot. In 1995, I left the Air Force and I joined a British contractor and flew another 10 years in the Saudi Air Force. In that time, I'm both helicopters and flying jets, a jet instructor, both in the military and in Saudi Arabia. 2005, I decided to come back, leave the desert to Canada. And I'd only been flying fixed-wing ejection seat aircraft for 16 years, and I phoned up a military buddy of mine. And he said, hey, how about you come back to helicopters? I said, yeah, absolutely. So I spent the next 3 years fighting forest fires out through Western Canada. And then somebody called me up and said, hey, you want to come over to Afghanistan? So I said yes. So I spent 4.5 years in Afghanistan, month on, month off, flying over there, helicopter supporting the war effort. From there, I joined Cougar Helicopters. I've been here about 10 years. I started as a line pilot, flying the guys to and from the rigs. And then I joined the SAR department about 3 or 4 years ago. I'm currently a search and rescue captain in Cougar Helicopters.
Wow, wow, that's an incredible journey. When you were a young fella, did it ever, I mean, you were pretty darn young when you started at 16, but when you were, say, 10 years old, was this something you always dreamed about?
Absolutely. There was never any doubt. I went to the Air Cadets when I was 13 and joined up. I knew I wanted to get into flying. I remember when I was in high school in grade 9, and when you're in high school, the guidance counselors and all that, hey, what do you want to do? And you do these tests. And I said, I want to be a pilot in the military. So she kind of stopped, because this was in the late 70s, and the military probably wasn't all that popular back then. She went to the recruiting center, found out, she said, all the information, came to me and said, these are the courses you need, these are the marks you need to even start. So thank you very much, and that's where it started. So I applied myself on those subjects, applied to the Air Force, got in, completed the training, and the rest is history.
It's amazing, one of the things I learned that the search and rescue that you guys do here is so important to the community. It's important to the industry that you're supporting, but you also support the community. I'm in awe of what it is that you guys do every day here. How is that, if you see what you do every day and you see life at its potential worst, how does that shape you throughout your day-to-day?
Well, it's a really interesting question, because being a search and rescue pilot, I sometimes laugh about, we're basically the fire hall, in a cement village. The alarm doesn't go off that much, but when it does go, there's no time to think twice. Yeah. We do dispatch, and it brings back a few of the missions we've had. You can sit here for almost your entire shift, which I've done, and it happened once in the end of December. We were waiting about an hour before crew change, and then the alarm go off. And a man on the vessel Terra Nova with a SCBA slipped off a ladder and fell in a tank and landed on his back, cracked his head. And we launched right away in bad weather, got on the vessel. And the reason I remember the story is because months later, we get a little thank you email, personalized, saying, hey, I was that guy. So it meant something. So there is some personal satisfaction. Yeah. There's also gratification amongst ourselves. We had another day, so that was at the end of one day. There was another day where we walked in, it was a night shift, and we just walked in. It was still like today, so it's still daylight. And we were sitting, talking, doing our briefing, and then the alarm go off. And this one was a gentleman who was walking the trails north of Carbonear along a river and slipped off a wild waterfall and hit his head and fell at the bottom. So the local rescue fire department volunteers got on scene, and they were it was beyond them. They couldn't get the guy out. He was in bad need, so we went, and within an hour and a half, we launched, we found him, we put our medics down, stabilized him, hoisted him up, had him at the hospital before it was dark.
Yeah.
So that day was personal gratification because the team just clock fire, just bam, 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 just it was just perfect. So it was personally gratifying, that one. So we've had information from the customer, we've had our own personal gratification, and then there's the variable part of this job, where during COVID we would actually stay at home, and then one night my phone blew up, an alarm. So we race in here, and I'm like all set to go offshore to get whomever's in trouble. And my co-pilot, who just got in the door before me, said, "Nope, we're going to Deer Lake. We're picking up a pregnant woman who's in distress." So that night, we launched off in the middle of the night to Deer Lake, picked up this lady, came back to St. John's, and of course St. John's. 100-foot cloud, quarter-mile visibility. And we landed here, put her on an ambulance, and we don't ever find the outcome. Most times never find the outcome, but I'm sure things turned out well for her. So it's the job can be spicy, and the person at briefing that says, "Hey, let's hope for a quiet night," we curse him because the alarm rings 10 minutes later.
You don't say that, I guess.
You do not
never say that out loud.
You don't wish for a quiet night
No.
because it always backfires.
How do you control the adrenaline as this is all unfolding?
It actually is a learned skill. And I learned it back in the Air Force. I was a flight safety officer on my first helicopter squadron. And there was a crash downrange. And so I walked in as a safety officer in front of we're preparing an emergency response. And everybody's running around, their heads they're wound up, even I'm wound up. And I learned this, and I still today. The commanding officer walked in, Colonel Rook, I remember his name, and he looked at everybody and said, "Everybody, look at me. We've already had one crash today, we're not having two." And that lesson's been with me forever. And you do have to. You have to watch yourself. You know you're getting wound up. You see crew members getting wound up. I've actually been in this room where I've just turned the light off. 30 seconds, everyone stop, turn the light back on. Okay, let's focus.
Yeah.
So it is true, it's a physiological effect, but it can be controlled.
Interesting, yeah. Well, I appreciate that because I can tell you I'll use that in the rest of my life. When it comes to Cougar, you've been all over the world. Mm-hmm. What does Cougar mean to you?
I live in St. John's now. So local, it is industry here that is core or essential to the industry in St. John's and Newfoundland. But in a flying career, flying the S-92 helicopter and now flying in the search and rescue role, I've never flown a safer, more advanced, more capable, or with more capable people in my life. Yeah. It's been absolutely a treat. And I believe this is the end of my career. I've been, it is what it is. Yeah. I'm getting older. I've had enough hours. So I'll stay here until I'm been used up or it's time to go, whatever happens, the outcome is. But yeah, I will be staying here for the rest of my career because it just really is the pinnacle of my flying aviation career.
One more question, and you've just articulated this is the end of your career soon. You've done a lot. What advice would you give to someone who's thinking about this career? You've got a very, very incredible long background, and I think you'd be perfectly positioned to tell someone what to expect and what to do, go about getting into this.
If you want to be in aviation, you have to make the decision early. Playing catch up later on in the game is tough. And I'll be honest with you, it's not always easy on the family either. No. So if you are thinking about it, it's an early decision. Although there have been some people late in the game to join. And normally, early on, school education is important, and then decide the path. There's the military path or the civilian path. Both are equally fine. And then don't try to pick your end job. Just pick it's a career. You're not going to always be in the same employer. You're not always going to be flying the same aircraft, but you'll always be a pilot. So just get started. It doesn't matter what your first aircraft is because it's not going to be the one you fly forever. Just start getting experience and always listen to common sense in your gut. If you think something's wrong or something's bad, yeah, it probably is. So stay alive.
Well, folks, there you have it. Dana Aitken is a consummate professional, and I am calm just sitting next to you. So
Excellent.
I appreciate your service and what you continue to do.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure talking to you.